Hey everyone, welcome back. This is Hannah Fletcher, and joining me, I have the president of Viral Nation. I have Jonathan. First of all, Jonathan, I have not had the opportunity to actually meet you in person. I'm so excited. How are you? How are you today on this fine Friday?
I am good. Getting ready for Rosh Hashanah tonight. So good time to connect. This is the beginning of the Jewish New Year. So starting with a lot of good luck and good vibrant good vibes and good karma. And then I just got back from Brand Week this week. We were down in Miami for about 4 days and recovering from that amazing event as well. So happy to be here.
That's awesome. Actually, before we get started, I would love if you could explain to our audience. I was following along with everybody down in Brand Week, and it was in Miami, like you mentioned, which looked like it was so much fun. Can you tell our audience a little bit, just like a elevator pitch style of what Brand Week is, and just to educate our audience?
Yeah, essentially, like Brand Week is a massive industry summit that takes place, generally at an off-site location from, the tri-state where we end up having a lot of events and opportunities. And so this year it was in Miami, and it's ultimately all the thought leaders and agencies and brands and vendors that all have a hand to play in this creator economy, all summit down in during Brand Week, and there's workshops and keynotes and opportunities to connect with people one-on-one and have private meetings and tastemaker events. So it's just kind of like our industry Super Bowl, so to speak.
I love that. Well, thank you for telling us. I was curious myself because I was aware of it, but I didn't know in depth what it was, and that's kind of what I gathered again by following along. But thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
Anyway, I want to talk to you. So obviously, Viral Nation has signed some fantastic talent. You guys always do. But I've noticed that this next batch of people that have come in are very unique in their own right. Tell us a little bit about how excited you are to be welcoming these new creators. And if there's anybody in particular that stands out to you that you'd like to talk about, you have the floor.
You know, it's kind of we have a unbelievable roster. We represent over 850 unbelievable creators right now and growing. And it's always hard to show favorites. To kind of like I look at all of them as kids, like my own kids in the sense where that to me they're all amazing. But what I'll say is what we're finding with some of the new recent talent signs that came on is at every stage of their career there will be continued opportunity, and talent like Brooke Ashley Hall and the Fiora family and all these amazing new talent that have come in, they've now entered a certain level in their career where they need more resources to get to the next level. These are already household names, already have unbelievable following, already have great content, but how do you get to the next level when looking at yourself as a business, right? So leveraging all of our resources from our podcast division to our OTT and licensing to our talent ventures, to our internal PR team, all scripted and unscripted with Paul Tellner. All of these resources were created to specifically work with, especially creators at that level, to harness their career for the future. So that's ultimately, in summation, why I'm excited they're here and why we're excited to work with them. Because even though they've done so much and are such amazingly well-known creators, there's still so much more we can do.
Most definitely. And that's one of the reasons why I love having the opportunity to even work with you guys is I love speaking to every one of you and getting your perspectives on it's evident that you guys are so excited about the talent that you're able to sign. And I think it's such a unique agency in its own right, because you guys represent people that are so well-rounded, and like you mentioned, they've done all the legwork, so they deserve to have as many opportunities that they can be given as possible. And I think you guys are very good at being able to assist that, and obviously that's through the agents. So I'm very curious. I've been in the industry. I've basically been in the industry since I was 3 years old. I've been moving and grooving and embarking on different opportunities. And in this industry, one of the biggest things is obviously finding a management or an agent or any type of representation that really aligns with you. So I'm curious to know, when you guys bring in agents, obviously you're bringing in agents from different walks of life and that have different experiences, but what is it that you train your agents to particularly look for and find when it comes to the talent coming from the big boys looking onto the agents?
That's a good question, Hannah. You do this often? This is a good question.
Sometimes, yeah.
I kind of have two answers for you. So first, First, let's talk about what I look for. Actually, and I'll tie it together. Let's look for what I look for in an agent, right? So, what I look for in terms of the people we like to hire or groom here is first off looking for people who are coachable, have a good attitude, and are obsessed with our industry, right? Because you want someone who's tenacious, excited to be here, loves what we do, and wants to learn and grow. Then the most important thing there is by looking at the agents, and I don't really call them agents. They're, in my perspective, we always like to pride ourselves on being talented business partners. So what I truly look for in terms of agents are people who are entrepreneurs, because I want to partner with them, entrepreneur, to build the careers of these other amazing creators. And the next most important thing is like, what is your passion, right? Like we all consume content, but there's always going to be content. There's always a type of vertical or platform or je ne sais quoi that we all fall in love with. What speaks to you? What are you really passionate about? Because that's where you're going to get the most passion with the talent that you're working with. So then once we kind of solidify making sure that we have the right team, we have the right people, and we have the right entrepreneurs in staff to work with talent, then what we look for from a creator level is what content are they creating? Are they passionate about it? What is the aesthetic? Is there an opportunity where we see we can help improve and optimize their content with them through better editing tactics or updating how they're creating their thumbnails or giving them a better direction on posting cadences in the ladder? So looking to see if we can immediately show them value and actually groom and grow them. And the next thing we also look at is, of course, what kind of engagement are they getting? Followers are important to us, but they're not everything. I think it's to me, it's about how are they actively keeping their audience engaged? How are they constantly pushing the content envelope forward? And what kind of impression are they leaving on the community that we can see visible in the sentiment in their comments? And so after those two areas of importance, then to having the conversation, right? Because the person behind quote unquote the content is the most important aspect of it. Are they a go-getter? Are they going to stay committed to their craft? What are their aspirations 3 to 5 years out career wise? Because the industry today is as we see it, it's not about, hey, let me promote this. you know no, you are your own media channel, you are your own creative network, you are the entrepreneur. We have to be able to align on just business acumen and business direction for this to really work. Because if a creator is going to get past that 2 3 year relevancy stigma, there has to be a serious commitment, not only from us but a serious commitment from them to continue to improve and develop their craft.
Definitely. Now, I want to ask you also very great answer. And I love interviewing on this type of thing. I love the content creator space. I think it's a space that always needs to be fought for even more respect and even more debunking. And I just think that content creating is such a full-time job that people don't understand, especially certain people of certain walks of life and certain generations. So I want to ask you, what would be the biggest piece of advice you would give to a content creator when it comes to pulling that trigger and looking for the next step and looking for representation? Is there, I mean, obviously we see people that blow up overnight. We see people that have a very nice, steady, consistent chug for 2 and 3 years, and then they hit that million or 2 or 3 million on TikTok. Is there any type of like measurement or any type of timeline on average, just from your experience and your expertise, that you would look at and say, hey, if you do this, this, and this around this, maybe why don't you try to reach out and have somebody have a meeting with you?
Yeah. So first off, I would say, anyone that's getting into this space or just in the beginning of it, you know, copy the people that you admire, right? Like it's the same thing as like as an athlete, right? If I want to be an amazing quarterback or I want to be an amazing basketball player, I'm going to look at the people that have done it well, and I'm going to try and pick up as much as I possibly can from them, right? Same thing in the creator space. If there are other creators out there that you love and you're just like, oh my god, like they just kill it, do your best to copy them starting off, right? Because when you start going through the process of copying them to a degree, then it's going to bring you your own inspiration, how you can take what they've created and do on your own. But you're also going to learn all of the skills and tactics that make that content come to life. How are they shooting? How are they lighting? How are they editing? What's the audio? So once you start playing and you start learning through trial and error, you're going to learn a lot. Then you really got to get down to the basics. And when I say basics, it's you got to plan out your content. You need to think through the story. You need to think through the topics. You need to think through your posting cadences. You need to think through your captions. You got to take it seriously, and you got to map it out and make sure that you're also allowing yourself, depending on the type of creator you are, to collaborate with other creators that make sense. Because the power of collaborating with other meaningful creators is not only just creating cool content together, but you're cross-pollinating and creating new reach and awareness for creators. And honestly, if you can just nail those three basics and maintain your posting cadences and continue to make sure your content is being produced in the aesthetic and the format that you want, while being mindful of what the overall story and goals are, apologies, it's only a matter of time, for you to see success, right? Repetition, 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 or the, famous old, mantra, like, 10,000 hours in an industry to become an expert. It's the same thing with being a creator. You need to constantly, practice what you preach, because the one thing that we have to our benefit that a lot of industries don't is you could just take one amazing piece of content that makes you go viral. It could just take one huge, unbelievable video, unbelievable TikTok that just separates all the content you've been doing from historically just to that one moment that takes you to the next moon. And once you capture that, that's when you got to continue to ride that wave and double down and not give up on developing against the strategy that you've created.
I love that answer. I love that answer so much. I want to ask you, in your opinion, obviously repetition and consistency are key. And especially, like, I've heard, obviously, with you saying it, and I watch a lot of interviews for fun in my free time. That's what I watch. I don't watch TV. I watch interviews. So I've always heard people mentioning about consistency and about how, they've hit points of they love making what they're making and they know what's viral and they know what works. But I've also heard a lot of creators obviously mention about burning out. And I feel like that is like a godforsaken term in this content creation space and industry. What would be your best advice if you could give any insight towards, making that viral content? And obviously it's coming from a place of love, but what would be your best advice if somebody is starting to experience that realm of potentially burning out? What would you say to that?
There's a very old Army term from the Airborne Rangers is proper preparation prevents piss poor performance, right? And ultimately, what that means is if you're planning things out and you're planning ahead, you won't burn out, right? It's that constant feeling of FOMO. I got to create more. I got to create more. Got to create more. You know, plan out your productions. Spend 2 or 3 days, you know, shooting all the content for the next 2 to 4 weeks, right? If you really sit down and map it out, you're not only going to create cost efficiencies for yourself, because some creators obviously sometimes hire a shooter or a producer or a videographer or an engineer. If you map it out and you stick to your plan, you'll prevent burnout and it'll become a fluid system. The other thing though is you really got to look at the data when you're releasing content. And I think also, I'm very biased in the sense that I think YouTube does a phenomenal job with this. But when you're creating content, you got to look at how the audience is engaging with it. What were those moments that peaked the highest level of awareness and interest? What is the type of content that your audience is truly gravitating to? Was it a reaction? Was it the colors being used? Was it the topic of conversation? So don't just go out there and just produce, 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 produce. Produce, evaluate, produce, evaluate, produce, evaluate. So if you can plan it, you can map it, you can evaluate it. Not only will you not get burnt out, but you'll truly own and master your own craft. And again, it's always about producing and evaluating, because in order to truly master your art, you have to know what's resonating with the people who are interested in watching.
I love that. Produce, evaluate. I'm gonna take that, write it down, and apply that moving forward just in my life. I think that that's a brilliant recipe that you just gave. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Jonathan, before we wrap up, I have one more question for you. And I personally love to ask everybody that I meet at Viral Nation this question because I think it's a good one. And I love to hear everybody's answers. What is it that you believe that really sets Viral Nation apart from other companies, other agencies that are out there that also offer representation to content creators?
It's a really good question. I would say what we offer is what's needed to be successful today and for the future, right? When I partner with Matt and Joe and Tony on taking talent to the next level, we sat there and we thought about what has always worked historically in this industry, kind of looking at all the amazing trailblazers and entertainment agencies in the space. What has worked historically, but what is going to be successful for the future? And so we did was we set out to not only hire the best in class people, but we also set out to not bring in and groom amazing people to become the leaders that we believe they need to be successful as agents and managers in this industry. And then most importantly, what are the resources and services needed to truly provide all of our talent as much opportunity as possible, so as their career continues to evolve, so can their ability to evolve their content and their abilities to monetize. And ultimately, I don't think there's anyone in this business that truly has all the resources and values and offerings that we have, in conjunction to already biasly what I think we have best in class people working here and being groomed here. So I think the combination of it make us a really big contender in this industry. But we're always going to continue to push the ball forward and lead by example.
Very well said. And I couldn't agree more. After having met with you guys over the past few months and working with a bunch of you, I agree to everything that you said, obviously. So thank you so much, Jonathan, for taking the time to speak with us and for speaking to all of these wonderful topics involving content creation and the new signings. And we're so excited moving forward to see who else you guys continue to sign. And thank you again for just sharing your wisdom with our audience. And hopefully we get another content creator that's inspired out of this and utilizes your skills moving forward. So thank you so much.
It's an absolute pleasure. And I would say, final remarks, like, it's never been a more exciting time to be in this business. I feel like we're still only in the second inning, but everything's starting to shape forward, and I'm excited to see what's going to happen next, because there's so much more.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I agree. And again, thank you for your time, and hopefully we get to chat all about this again soon.